Good morning and welcome to our July Board of Commissioners zoning hearing. This morning, I'm pleased that we have Pastor Frank Johnson here with us from Bethesda Baptist Church. He will be leading us in our invocation. After the invocation, I will then lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance. For those of you willing and able, please rise for our invocation and pledge.
Let us all bow. Most gracious Father, and we ask now that you would come and share your spirit with us in this meeting. We honorably ask, oh God, that you guard our hearts, our minds as we carry out this meeting. Bless us now with your spirit, that wisdom will fill the room. We ask, oh God, that you would now bless every leader, every participant in this meeting. God, we place it in your hands. And then, God, we know if we put it in your hands that everything is going to be all right. Give us the wisdom to carry out all the procedures that we need to do with honor, dignity, and in the spirit of likeness of you. In Jesus' name we do pray. Amen. Flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our meeting is now officially called to order, and Pastor, thank you so much for that invocation. All right. Miss Jeannie Payton, it's good to see you up here this morning. She is sitting in for our zoning manager, and please help us in leading us through today's agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Board. Today's hearing will be conducted with the following processes and procedures. Each case is called in numerical order. When the case is called, would the applicant please stand and raise their hand to show that you are here. Then we are going to call and see if there is anyone opposed to a case. We would ask that anyone opposed to the case please stand and raise your hand so you can be counted for the record. After recognizing the applicant and any opposition, the applicant and opposition will ask to come forward to be sworn in so they can be present testimony to the board. The applicant will testify first, and then the opposition, if any, will testify second. Each side gets 10 minutes to state their case or concerns. There is not a rebuttal process, so please convey all your information to the board within your 10-minute period. Additionally, if more than one person wishes to speak on a case, we ask that you coordinate with each other about the points you are to talk about. Because each side only gets 10 minutes, you will not want to cover the same information twice. After both sides have their 10-minute presentation period, the board will start to discuss the case before them. They may call speakers to come back to the podium for additional information. After that, the board will render a decision to either approve, deny, hold, or continue the case. There are 3 cases on today's printed agenda which have been withdrawn without prejudice, and these cases will not be heard today. The first case is rezoning case Z26 of 2022, Duke Realty Limited Partnership. This case has been withdrawn without prejudice and will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z40 of 2022, Dennis Palmer. This case has been withdrawn without prejudice and will not be heard today. Other business item 35 of 2022, Davist Enterprises LLC. This case has been withdrawn without prejudice and will not be heard today. Additionally, Madam Chair and Board, there's one case on the agenda which the applicant is asking for the case to be withdrawn without prejudice. That would be other business item 33 of 2022, Tcca LLC. The applicant is asking that this case be withdrawn without prejudice. Madam Chair and Board.
Thank you. Commissioner Sheffield.
I make a motion to add OB 33 to the withdrawn cases.
Okay, second. Well, let's back. We're going to have to. The withdrawn cases have already been formally withdrawn, so I think we'll need to make a motion to withdraw it. And do it without prejudice. Yeah, thank you.
I make a motion to withdraw OB 33 without prejudice.
Perfect, thank you. I second that. Is there any discussion? Call the question. The motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
There are a number of cases on today's printed agenda which have either been held or continued by the staff or the Planning Commission, and these cases will not be heard today. Case Z78 of 2021, St. Benedict's Episcopal School, has been held by the Board of Commissioners until the August 16, 2022 Board of Commissioners hearing. So Z78 of 2021 will not be heard today. SLUP 11, St. Benedict's Episcopal School, is held by the Board of Commissioners until the August 16th Board of Commissioners hearing. So SLUP 11 of 2021 will not be heard today. Case Z7 of 2022, KM Homes, is held by the Planning Commission until the August 2nd, 2022 Planning Commission hearing. So Z7 of 2022 will not be heard today. Case Z34 of 2022, Rise Properties, has been continued by the Planning Commission until the August 2nd, 2022 Planning Commission hearing. So Z34 of 2022 will not be heard today. Case Z35 of 2022, Morrison Building and Investment, has been held by the Planning Commission from the until the August 2nd Planning Commission hearing. So Z35 of 2022 will not be heard today. Case Z36, David Gurnett, has been held by staff until the August 2nd, 2022 Planning Commission hearing. So Z36 of 2022 will not be heard today. Case Z38, David Pearson Communities, has been held by the Planning Commission until August 2nd, 2022 Planning Commission hearing. So Z38 of 2022 will not be heard today. Case Z42, Jonathan Conway, the Stonehenge Group, EBP LLC, has been held by the Planning Commission until the August 2nd, 2022 Planning Commission hearing. So Z42 of 2022 will not be heard today. Case OSC 1 of 2022, Green Community Development LLC, has been continued by staff until the August 16th, 2022 Board of Commissioners hearing. So OSC 1 of 2022 will not be heard today. SLUP 5 of 2022, Parallel Towers 3 LLC, aka Parallel Infrastructure LLC, has been continued by the Planning Commission until the August 2nd, 2022 Planning Commission hearing. So SLUP 5 of 2022 will not be heard today. Finally, other business item 24 of 2022, House Simpson, has been continued by staff until the August 16th, 2022 Board of Commissioners zoning hearing. So other business item 24 of 2022 will not be heard today. I would like to ask people in today's audience to silence their cell phones. When the phones ring, they do interfere with the broadcast presentations, so please put your phones on mute. Any person wishing to speak before the Board of Commissioners must file a campaign contribution disclosure statement if within 2 years immediately preceding the filing of the rezoning application, a campaign contribution totaling $250 or more was made to a current member of the Board of Commissioners. Additional information concerning this announcement is on the table in the back of the room. I want to remind the applicants, opposition, and interested parties that information is due to the board on Wednesday prior to this hearing. Any information submitted after the Wednesday due date may or may not be considered by the board at their discretion. With that, Madam Chair and Board, I am ready to start the consent agenda.
All right, very good. Thank you.
The first case on consent is rezoning case Z21, Francisco Padilla, who's requesting a rezoning from CF to NRC for an office in land lot 1214 of the 19th District, located on the west side of Austell Road and on the south side of Dobby Lane. Planning Commission recommends deletion of Z21 to the LRC zoning district subject to: Number 1, site plan received by the Zoning Division on May 31st, 2022, with the District Commissioner approving minor modifications. Number 2, letter of agreeable conditions from Garvis L. Sams dated May 31st, 2022. Number 3, construction hours limited to Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. till 6 p.m. Number 4, Fire Department comments and recommendations. Number 5, Stormwater Management Division comments and recommendations. Number 6, Water and Sewer Division comments and recommendations. And number 7, Department of Transportation, comments and recommendations. The applicant is present. Is anyone here opposed to Z21 of 2022?
No.
Let the record show that there is no one opposed.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes,
may I add
Commissioner.
a revision, or should I wait till
Go
the
ahead,
end?
yes.
Okay. I'd like to make a modification to Z21 to item number 7 to the stipulation letter dated May 31st, 2022 from Garvis L. Sands Jr. to reflect that the dumpster enclosures is to have doors and the doors are to remain closed when not in use.
Oh, is this agreeable to the applicant?
Thank you. Thank you, Jeannie. Appreciate that.
Next case is rezoning case Z24 of 2022, Davist Enterprises LLC, who's requesting a rezoning from LRO and NRC to NRC for a personal care home in land lot 37 of the 20th District, located on the southwest side of Cobb Parkway, north of Cedar Crest Road. The Planning Commission recommends deletion of Z24 to the NRC and LRO zoning districts, subject to 1, the site plan dated June 23rd, 2022, 2, letter of agreeable conditions from David Wogren dated June 30th, 2022, 3, assisted living and personal care use only, 4, main structure shall be at least a 3-sided brick and the sides of the building facing Highway 41 shall be brick. Number 5, Fire Department comments and recommendations. Number 6, Water and Sewer Division comments and recommendations. Number 7, Stormwater Management Division comments and recommendations. Number 8, Department of Transportation comments and recommendations. Is the applicant present? Let the record show that the applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to Z24 of 2022?
Commissioner, do you need to add a comment?
No.
Thank you.
Let the record show there's no one opposed.
Commissioner Gambrell, I believe, has a comment.
Thank you. Just for some clarity, on number 2 with the letter of stipulations from David Wargren dated June 30th, 2022, I would like to delete number 14. And then on item number 4 from the Planning Commission recommendation, it should just state main structure shall be 3-sided brick.
Is the applicant amenable to the proposed change? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The next case is rezoning case Z29 of 2022, Maria del Carmen Rodriguez, who's requesting a rezoning from CF and R20 to the R20 district for a single-family residence in land lots 278 and 279 of the 17th district. It's located on the north side of Waltrip Circle, west of South Cobb Drive. The Planning Commission recommends approval of Z29 to R20 zoning district, subject to 1, the District Commissioner to approve the final site plan, 2, the existing accessory structures at the rear of the property to be removed within 60 days of the Board of Commissioners' final zoning decision, number 3, Fire Department comments and recommendations, 4, Water and Sewer Division comments and recommendations, 5, Stormwater Management Division comments and recommendations, and 6, Department of Transportation comments and recommendations. Is the applicant present? Let the record show that the applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to case Z29 of 2022? Let the record show there is no one opposed. The next case is rezoning case Z41, Southern Gas Partners LLC. They're requesting a rezoning from NS and GC to NRC for a convenience store with fuel sales and car wash in land lots 339 of the 16th district, located on the southwest corner of the intersection of Shaliford Road and Tcca Road. The Planning Commission recommends approval of Z41 to the NRC zoning district, subject to 1, a site plan received by the Zoning Division on June 14th, 2022, with the District Commissioner approving minor modifications. 2, a variance is identified in the zoning division comments regarding parking stall depth to be granted for designated vacuum spaces at the car wash only. 3, 20 feet along the southern property line to remain undisturbed to meet landscape buffer requirements. 4, fire department comments and recommendations. 5, Stormwater Management Division comments and recommendations. 6, Water and Sewer Division comments and recommendations. 7, Department of Transportation comments and recommendations. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to Z41 of 2022?
Got one.
Let the record show there is one person opposed.
Okay, we'll pull that.
Okay. The next case is rezoning case Z43 of 2022, JVH Properties LLC. It's requesting rezoning from GC to NRC for an office in land lot 621 of the 17th District, located on the south side of South Cobb Drive, northwest of Ivy Glen Drive. The Planning Commission recommends approval of Z43 to the NRC zoning district, subject to: Number 1, the site plan received by the zoning division on May 6, 2022, with the district commissioner approving minor modifications. 2, to maintain the existing 35-foot undisturbed buffer adjacent to the residential zoning along the southwest property line. 3, to include an 8-foot landscape enhancement strip along Ivy Glen Drive and South Cobb Drive. 4, fire department comments and recommendations. 5, Water and Sewer Division comments and recommendations. 6, Stormwater Management Division comments and recommendations. And 7, Department of Transportation comments and recommendations. Is the applicant present?
No.
The record show the applicant is not present. Is there anyone here opposed to Z43 of 2022?
No.
Let the record show there's no one opposed. The next case is rezoning Z44 of 2022, Tcca Trust LLC, who's requesting a rezoning from LRO to NRC for a personal care home in Landlop 776 of the 16th District, located on the southeast side of Sandy Plains Road, northeast of Scuffle Grit Road. The Planning Commission recommends approval for Z44 to the NRC zoning district, subject to: 1, the revised site plan dated May 25th of 2022, with the district commissioner approving the final site plan. Number 2, the letter of agreeable conditions from Garvis L. Sands Jr. dated June 10th, 2022. Number 3, the assisted living personal care home use only. 4, fire department comments and recommendations. 5, Stormwater Management Division comments and recommendations. 6, Water and Sewer Division comments and recommendations. And 7, Department of Transportation comments and recommendations. Let the record show that the applicant's representative is present. Is there anyone here opposed to Z44 of 2022?
No.
Let the record show there is no one opposed. The next case is...
Excuse me, Jeannie, we have an addition.
I have a couple of things to read into the record, Jeannie. Thanks.
Thank you.
For Z44, I would like to add a Georgia Native Plant Society rescue to be conducted on the site prior to clearing and grading, or LDP, and a maximum of 24 beds, and any additional would have to come back under other business. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
Mr. Sams, you're agreeable.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Go ahead.
Thank you. The next case is temporary land use case LUP 11, Jeffrey C. Smith, who's requesting a temporary land use to permit produce sales in land lots 1019 and 1054 of the 19th District, located on the east side of Austell Powder Springs Road, south of Fir Avenue. The Planning Commission recommends approval of the LUP LUP 11 for 24 months, subject to: number 1, the produce stand must be maintained to the side of the primary structure. Number 2, off-street parking and turnaround space to be provided to the side and rear of the existing structure. Number 3, business activity is limited to spring and summer months. And number 4, the Department of Transportation comments and recommendations. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to LUP 11?
No.
Let the record show there is no one opposed.
Thank you.
The next case is SLUP 9, Broward Development, requesting a special land use permit for a climate-controlled self-storage in land lots 405 and 498 of the 18th District, located on the northeast side of Mableton Parkway and on the southwest side of Cardell Circle, north of Honeycutt Road. The Planning Commission recommends approval of SLUP 9, subject to number 1, the final site plan and building architecture to be approved by the District Commissioner. Number 2, variance number 1 and number 2 granted as identified in the Zoning Division comments. Variance number 3 is not to be approved. Number 3, access hours to be from 6 a.m. until 10 p.m. 7 days a week. Number 4, the submittal 1 traffic study to be submitted during plan review. Number 5, Mableton Parkway design guidelines must be met during plan review. Number 6, landscape review committee shall be established to include the applicant, county arborist, and representatives from the Mableton Improvement Coalition, with final approval by the District Commissioner. Number 7, all other staff comments and recommendations not otherwise in conflict. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to SLUP 9?
No.
Let the record show there is no one opposed. Moving into other business items on the consent agenda. First is other business item 26 of 2022, to consider a site plan amendment for Reich Properties LLC regarding rezoning application Z203 of 2005 for the property located on the west side of Oakdale Road and on the east side of South Cobb Drive in land lot 690 and 751 of the 17th District. Staff recommends approval subject to number 1, stipulation number 4 from the letter of stipulations to be amended to allow 58 parking spaces. Number 2, District Commissioner approve the final site plan. Number 3, stormwater management comments contained on the other business packet. Number 4, Cobb DOT comments contained in the other business packet. And number 5, all previous stipulations not in conflict with this amendment will remain in effect. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to other business item 26 of 2022?
No.
Let the record show there is no one opposed. The next item is other business item 32 of 2022, to consider a stipulation and site plan amendment for Longo Homes Incorporated, Vincent Longo, regarding rezoning application Z182 of 2005 for the property located on the west side of Mars Hill Road, south of Hadaway Road, in land lot 270 of the 20th District. Staff recommends approval subject to number 1, the site plan received by the Zoning Division on May 25th, 2022. Number 2, fire department comments contained in the other business packet. Number 3, stormwater management comments contained in the other business packet. Number 4, Cobb DOT comments contained in the other business packet. And number 5, all previous stipulations not in conflict with this amendment to remain in effect. Is the applicant present?
May I approach?
Yes, I see a hand in the back. Is that the applicant? Garvis, you're the applicant, correct?
No, Mr. Longo is a longstanding client of mine. He's asking for a continuance today.
Okay.
He wants to make the buffer an undisturbed buffer, and so that would require him to revise his site plan. It sounds counterintuitive to me to, number 1, take it off the consent agenda, or number 2, to do an undisturbed buffer, but that's what he wants to do. So he's asked if I would make that announcement for him this morning.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner?
30 days, I guess is
Yes,
what yours
ma'am.
is?
The next cycle.
Okay. I'm amenable to
Okay.
that.
Okay, would you like to make a motion to us to continue, please?
Sure, I'd like to make a motion for us to continue OB 32 of 2022 until the next VOC zoning hearing.
All right.
Second.
All right, is there any discussion? Call the question. The motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I didn't know about this until this morning, Commissioner Gambrill.
Thank you. Yeah.
The next case is other business item 34 of 2022, to consider a stipulation amendment for Mount Bethel Christian Academy Incorporated regarding case SLUP 11 of 2013. The property is located on the north side of Post Oak Tritt Road, west of Holly Springs Road, in land lots 599, 600, 625, and 626 of the 16th District. Staff recommends approval subject to, number one, the temporary classroom buildings are to be approved through August 1st, 2024. Number two, the fire department comments contained in the other business packet. Number three, Cobb DOT comments contained in the other business packet. And number four, all previous stipulations not in conflict with this amendment to remain in effect. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to other business item 34 of 2022?
No.
Let the record show there's no one opposed. Thank you.
I'd like to read a couple of additional stipulations into the record from an email received July 13th from East Cobb Civic Association, page 1, paragraph 1. This is Exhibit B of the petition for OB 34. Page 1, paragraph 1, line 7. Delete the words "its main church" and then on page 1, paragraph 4, delete the location of temporary classroom buildings as shown on recently approved site plan and insert the location of 2 temporary classroom buildings labeled as existing modular are shown on the recently approved site plan. And then this will be for a 2-year period through August 1st of 2024. And the applicant will have to come back for a renewal at that time if
Thank
they
you.
continue. And then, Mr. Moore, you are agreeable to these?
He's approaching.
Okay.
Yes, we're agreeable to that.
Okay. And also, can you keep us updated and the neighbors and community on a timeline for any permanent structures?
Yes, there's been far better communication amongst the neighbors and the community at large, and we'll continue to update them on progress as that becomes
Okay, because
available.
we've asked for a timeline of when you think the permanent buildings will be in place.
We'll absolutely do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
And is ECCA agreeable to that?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you. That's
All right, thank you. That wasn't in the zoning packet online, but I did see that ECCA did email that letter to, and copied Robin. So Robin, that should be in your email from
And
last week. Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Our final item is other business item 36 of 2022, to consider a stipulation and site plan amendment for YGLI LLC regarding rezoning application Z51 of 2018 for the property located on the northeast side of Floyd Road in the southeast of Floyd Drive in land lots 1,000 and 1,001 of the 19th District. Staff recommends approval subject to, number one, the site plan received by the Zoning Division June 14th, 2022, with the District Commissioner approving minor changes. Number two, Fire Department comments contained in the other business packet. Number three, site plan review comments contained in the other business packet. Number four, Cobb DOT comments contained in the other business packet. Number five, letters from Garvis L. Sams Jr. dated July 8th, 2022, and July 12th, 2022. Number 6, signed cross-parking easement agreement with the adjacent property submitted by Garvis L. Sams Jr. on July 14th, 2022. And number 7, all previous stipulations not in conflict with this amendment to remain in effect. The applicant, let the record show the applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to other business item 36 of 2022?
No.
Let the record show there is no one opposed.
All right, very good. Commissioner Sheffield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I need to go back to slup 9 and add another condition to include the stipulation letter. So for slup 9, I'd like to include letter of agreeable conditions from Garvis L. Sams dated April 5th, 2022. That's for the sister zoning.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other changes needed to the consent agenda before we vote on it, Commissioners? No.
Mr. Sams, are you agreeable to that?
I presumed he was, but good to check.
And that completes the consent agenda, Madam Chair and Board.
Thank you. All right, seeing we don't have any more modifications to consent, I move that we approve the consent agenda as revised.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments? Call the question. The consent agenda as revised passes 5-0, so we are good to go. For anyone here with the consent agenda and your item was passed and it stayed on consent, you're free to go at this time unless you'd like to watch the rest of the zoning hearing. And just of note, we have Z41, which was pulled, so that will actually be heard during this consent, during the regular agenda. And a reminder for anyone here for other business item 32, that agenda item was pulled and withdrawn.
They were continued around to be heard.
Jeannie, for Z41, where is that going to fall in the agenda?
I have the order being the continued or held to be heard as LUP 8 and 10, and then we have regular cases, and it would fall just below Z39.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Thank you. The next case is LUP 8 of 2022, Donna Jordan, who's requesting a temporary land use permit to allow 2 houses on 1 lot in Landlop 42 of the 18th District, located on the north side of Lee Road and west of Veterans Memorial Highway. Is the applicant present?
Great.
Let the record show the applicant is present. Is there anyone here in opposition of LUP 8, 2022?
No.
Let the record show there is no one opposed. All those that wish to address the board, please come forward to be sworn in.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Please feel free to go ahead whenever you're ready.
I don't have anything to say.
What's your name, ma'am?
Wendy Abernathy.
Wendy Abernathy. Okay. Do you want to tell us why you're here today, what you applied for?
Yeah, a temporary land use permit, and my house has been there, the other one, since '79.
Okay.
And just like every 2 years, I have to come and get another permit, and so that's why I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. So
Oh,
just...
I do
go-
have one question, though. Will I be notified again by mail when I have to do this again? Because I was late this time.
Okay, so...
Do you know that?
Okay, this is still part of the hearing, but why don't we go ahead and ask the question?
No, it's be up to the applicant when it's about to expire for them to be able to apply within the, if this one is actually approved or not. If it's a one-year permit, they need to be able to apply within that 1 year. So-
And the applicant has to initiate that process.
Correct.
You'll have to initiate it, ma'am, so it will be whatever the time frame is of the land use permit, that you'll have to apply prior to
Okay.
that. And for a land use permit, how many days in advance?
Well, it would be dependent upon however community development would handle it through their process to be able to review it. I mean, I'd at least go 90 days.
90 days
Yeah.
prior?
Yeah.
You would submit another application to
90
renew.
days?
Yeah.
It has been every 2 years.
No, what I'm saying is it'd be 90 days before it expires to
Oh.
make sure that it goes through the process and we get to this stage again before the expiration of the 2 years.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
So
I
just,
think there's some questions from the board.
yeah, let me just state for those who are watching what the applicant's proposal is. The applicant's requesting a renewal of a temporary land use permit to allow the continuance of 2 houses to be occupied on 1 parcel of land. The tax records indicate the main house was built in 1942. The previous temporary land use permit indicated the second home was built in 1975. The 2 homes have been owned and occupied by the same family for many years. The original application was a result of a code enforcement complaint. Okay, thank you.
Am I
Okay.
free to go?
Yes, ma'am, unless we have any questions afterwards, but you can sit down now. Thank you. Is there anyone opposed to this matter again? With that, I'll turn things over to you, Commissioner Sheffield.
Madam Chair, and I will ask Ms. Abernathy to return to the podium, sorry. Good morning.
Morning.
Just a quick question, actually a couple of questions. I have a name of Donna Jordan on the zoning application. Can you share with us who Ms. Jordan is?
That's my sister.
Okay, all right. Also, who is the owner of the property?
Me, Donna Jordan, and my other sister, Charlene Mahaffey.
Okay. As I review the code violations, there were notes that the owner lived in South Carolina?
That's my sister. She lives in North Carolina.
Okay, all right, but she's there at the property now?
No.
Okay, okay. So the original LUP, or the LUP, expired in 2019, and there was a lag in between then. Well, actually, I'm sorry, it expired in 2021. And based on your question to the chair, my assumption is that you were not aware that you had to reapply?
Correct.
Okay, is that the reason it's been delayed?
Yes.
Okay. There are just a couple of things, and I understand that there's been some work that's been done at the property, and you've brought the property into compliance. There was a couple of sheds that were removed, some campers that were removed from the backyard and onto the front. But I have to admit that, you know, I was a little disappointed to learn of the numerous visits and challenges met by code enforcement, because apparently code enforcement on numerous occasions attempted to visit the property and was very unsuccessful for a number of reasons, including, in what I read, a pit bull at the property, and they were not able to properly serve the citation for some of the violations. But even along with that, Ms. Abernathy, it's also the indifferent attitude and the lack of consideration to the neighbors. So the code violations for this property date back several years, and you know, what I have before me goes back as far back as 2020, but in my conversations with code enforcement, it goes back even further than that, and that's a little troubling for me. But as I contemplate a decision for your request, I'm almost forced to ask myself, you know, would we make the right decision as a board if we approve this application? Will things be different? Will you be in compliance with the code ordinances? Or will we find ourselves in a situation where we're consistently returning to the property as a result of complaints from the neighbors in the community? So, I'm forced to wonder if you would remain in compliance with code enforcement if your application is approved. The previous land permit expired on April 21st, which you are aware, February 21st of 2021. But it took nearly a year to renew it, which we've already addressed that issue. But not knowing that it's your responsibility doesn't relieve you of the responsibility in applying for the application. So that neglect, to me, it signals a strong disregard for the process. And also the use of county resources and having code enforcement to repeatedly visit the property. But as a gentle reminder, as we discussed earlier, if it is your intent to apply for renewal, the application must be submitted before the expiration of the current permit. I am a bit reluctant to provide an opportunity based on the number of previous code violations, but above all, the indifference to your neighbors and the community. However, I will show some grace and make a motion to approve the application, albeit very reluctantly, with the following conditions. And Madam Chair, I guess I can just make a motion to approve with the following conditions. That the LUP shall be for a period of 12 months, not 24 months. Code enforcement shall inspect the property on a quarterly basis to ensure compliance during the 12-month period. The applicant is to secure the proper vehicle tags for the recreation vehicles or any other vehicle on the property no later than August 31st, 2022. All vehicles are to be parked in the driveway on a hardened surface. No vehicles are to be parked in the backyard for any length of time or for any reason. The use of campers or recreational vehicles for living space is prohibited. Items stored on the property are to be stored in an enclosed structure, and all staff comments and recommendations that are not otherwise in conflict.
Thank you.
And that concludes my motion.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there a second? Thank you. Ma'am, you don't have to sit up here while we complete this. Thank you. Any discussion? I have some questions, and Commissioner Gamble, were you preparing to ask a question?
Is the applicant agreeable to these conditions?
Does she
Okay.
have to be? I didn't think so.
No. I mean, she can ask that of the applicant, but she doesn't necessarily need to be. A question was asked for the applicant, and I'm
Where is
sorry,
she?
we keep going. You can just nod from where you are or respond. A question was asked if you are amenable to the conditions that were shared by the commissioner. Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Burrow.
I just was going to ask of code enforcement, if anyone's here, or maybe Jeannie, is she in compliance now from the,
It's my understanding that she
Violations? Okay.
has met all the requirements.
Right now,
Violations.
I know you mentioned she had made significant improvements, but I didn't know if everything was in compliance.
The tags.
Well, I did reach out to code enforcement because I received an email as late as Sunday evening that there was, and hopefully I have a picture here, an extension cord that was running to the camper. I don't know if anyone from code enforcement is here or if they had an opportunity to visit the property. But for argument's sake, I guess we'll just say that it is in compliance with code enforcement.
I believe everything that they identified on their first visits and
Okay.
follow-up visits were being rectified minus the tags. something like that could occur after compliance had been met,
Okay,
falling out.
gotcha. All
And you
right.
added steps that will take care of those violations to be
Yes.
current. Thank you.
Yeah, save for, if there's a extension cord running to a camper, I know today's stipulation provides no one is to be living in the camper.
Correct.
Right, because that wouldn't be in compliance. Okay,
And again, code enforcement had not verified that, so I can't really be
Okay.
forceful with that at all, so.
I do have a question. It looks as if this second home has been on the property since 1975, according to the records. But it looks as if there has been a lag in the land use permit. Has the land use permit been renewed every 2 years? I mean, if it's not known to the applicant, is this something that we're catching now because of the code enforcement issue?
I'm not completely aware of the timeline of all the renewals. I think it has been renewed on a fairly steady basis.
Okay.
For quite some time, but this time fell short.
Okay, thank you, because Commissioner, I've seen us have zoning hearings where we've just zoned the second home, where we didn't require somebody to come in time and time again. Now, considering all that you have going on there, the land use permit makes sense so you can monitor it. But, I mean, this has been since 1975. I can't perceive the reasonability of someone coming here for over 40 years to get a land use permit for what seems to be a permanent living situation. Yeah. Okay. Are there any other comments or questions? All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion or questions before I call the question? All right, call the question. The motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
The next case is temporary land use LUP 10 of 2022. Jose A. Arellana requests a temporary land use permit to allow more vehicles than the code allows in land lot 16 of the 17th district, located on the south side of Birchwood Road and the east side of Walnut Circle. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is present. Is there anyone here in opposition of LUP 10? Let the record show there is no one opposed. All those that wish to address the board, please come forward to be sworn in.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, I come in, for a permit for my property for 5 cars. But I got a 4 son. Everybody's working. Well, now I work in 3, me not working today, but coming over here. But I got another guy in my house, but he working 5 to 12 tonight. So another people's working in the morning. I need a permit for 5 cars because everybody need a car. You see one guy working CVS, another son working Quick 3, another guy in Taco Bell. Everybody got a different horario, for working. So I need to please my permits, my property for 5 cars.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thank
Okay.
you. Again, I saw there was no one in opposition. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. So I'm going to turn things over to the
thank you.
commissioner. Mhm.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And while we may not have any people in attendance that are in opposition, I have received several emails in opposition to this application.
Okay.
And if I can have the applicant to return, please.
Sir, can you state your name for the record? Thank you, Commissioner.
State
Will you
your-
state your name? Tell us your name.
Jose Orellana.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. You mentioned that there are 5 adults at the property and 5 vehicles.
Yes.
Are you renting any rooms to any unrelated adults?
Let's owner the house.
Pardon?
Me owner the house.
You're the owner of the house, but are you renting to any unrelated adults?
No.
Okay.
Only got my 4 sons and me. It's in my
Okay.
house.
Okay. And how old are your sons?
One is 27, 24, 23, and 19.
Okay. And each of your sons are owners of the vehicles, plus yourself, as you indicated?
Say again, I don't understand. It's my good.
No, that's quite all right. You indicated that each of your sons own a vehicle and you also own a vehicle.
Yeah, everybody needed your car, because I needed work a different place, everybody.
Sure.
Yeah, that's why I needed police permits, because sometimes one guy working one horario, the other person tonight, I don't have one job is to start everybody at the same place.
Okay.
I
Right,
work at
I
different place,
understand. I understand. Was there ever a time where there were 7 vehicles parked at your property?
No, now I got a 5.
But was there ever a time where there were 7 vehicles parked at your
Yeah,
property?
before, because when I go to my country, and my nephew, he come and leave your car in my grass and my property. But when me coming, I take it out, Now I only have a 5.
Okay, and what was the length of time that the 7 vehicles were at your property?
No, now.
Now, how long were they at your property?
Oh, I don't know,
The
because I
seven-
been go to my country for 1 month and a half. When I
Pardon?
come in, my nephew, he leave the car in the grass. So when the guy passed, I see the car over there in the grass, but now no put no more cars in the grass.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
Does anyone else have questions for the applicant?
No.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Commissioner.
Do any of your spouse or any of your sons have spouses?
Yeah,
Okay. Thanks. And do any of those spouses have vehicles?
uh-huh.
Do any of the spouses own vehicles?
I don't understand so much.
Do they have a car,
Yeah,
the spouse?
yeah. I have 2 right now. My car and the other son, and working tonight.
It's not clear.
It's not, okay. So does your son have a wife?
No, nobody, single, everybody.
Okay, everybody is single.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Are any cars parked in the garage, or is there a garage?
4 in the garage, one outside, one corner in the corner. But I got a concrete, no grass, nothing.
Okay.
'Cause he's allowed 4 outside, correct?
Well, it's based on the square footage of the home, which we didn't touch on. It's like 1,100 square feet. But, okay, during the Planning Commission meeting a few weeks ago, you had a young woman with you that was, I assume she was an interpreter for you, but she's not here with you today.
Oh, okay, yeah, but I don't have a interpreter today because I don't find it,
Okay,
Everybody needs a lot of money for coming for 1 hour over here.
okay.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, I'm just wondering, I mean, we can move forward, I'm prepared to move forward, but I just want to make sure that there's a clear understanding, or he has a clear understanding of, how we're moving forward. But my thought is, he appeared and he's here without an interpreter, which he had last time. So the other side of me tells me that he does have a clear understanding of what's being described and what's happening. So,
Yes, if he doesn't have the clearest understanding, he's here today, which makes me think there's a desire to move forward.
Okay.
I'm not aware of our processes with respect to paying an interpreter. From what I've thought I heard the applicant share, he would have to pay the individual who came
Oh, really?
to the
Okay.
hearing. And so that may be a bar, and that may be something for us to
Okay.
consider, beyond this process,
Okay.
or
All right.
beyond this hearing today.
Okay. Are there, are there any other questions from anyone? Go
How
ahead.
many cars is he allowed based on the
2.
290?
Two.
Before we go into questions for staff, do we have any more questions for the applicant? Because we can let him sit down.
I don't have any further questions. Do you guys have any down on that end? No?
Okay. Sir, you can have a seat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's a code enforcement complaint. And just a little background on the property. The house is 1,146 square feet. According to code, it allows 2 people and 2 cars based on the living space. But it's more than doubled at this property. In the most recent, is he still here? Okay. The most recent code enforcement, code case synopsis dates back to February of this year, and there's been a history of code enforcement violations at this property with this particular applicant. The code enforcement violation dated February 19th reads in part that there were 7 vehicles on the property, and this was identified by a code enforcement officer, that there were 7 vehicles on the property, 4 were parked in the driveway, 3 were parked on the grass. Also, you can tell from the photo, or maybe not, that the property sits on the corner, and the inspector was also able to see through to the backyard and identified a large pile of debris, scattered trash in the driveway and the yard. At one point, there was a mattress leaning on the side of the house and miscellaneous items stored in the carport. So, I am concerned just about the overall care that's given to this property. So it's bigger than just the number of vehicles here, is just the lack of caring for the property, and again, showing consideration for your neighbors and for the community. But above that, the number of vehicles, and this has been from the opposition, that the number of vehicles imposes a hardship because it restricts the sight distance from the people that are driving down the street, which obviously now introduces this concern for safety.
Okay.
So with that, I'm prepared to make a motion. I make a motion that LUP 10-2022 be denied.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, and discussion on Planning Commission and staff both recommended denial.
Oh, yes, they did. Yeah.
Just one. Thanks.
Thanks.
Commissioner, I can understand, considering the history of this, why you would recommend denial and why staff did. Just considering the exigence of the time right now with housing and how difficult it is, I can't support a denial. Housing is impossible right now. Housing is extremely difficult for people to find right now. And I hear what the code is for the county, and I wonder if it's over-restrictive for 2 adults, particularly if they're unrelated. The house I lived in before I moved to my current home was about this size, and I had 2 boys, and my husband and I had a car, and should my children be of driving age, we would have had 4 vehicles, which means we would have been out of compliance. I think our code may not reflect the challenge that people have with affordability of space. It may not reflect the fact that people may have multiple children who are driving, and the fact that many millennials are living home right now because housing is extremely difficult. I don't like the condition that the way that this house has been kept, and I think those code enforcement issues do need to be addressed. But we've also had hearings here where we talked about code enforcement not necessarily being a bar for zoning. And I believe those issues that are on the property as far as storage is concerned, those need to be ameliorated. That mattress is not acceptable. If there's a driveway, they can park on the grass, but I cannot support us looking at how we can keep people in homes, because if people are not living in homes, that's another issue for the county to have to deal with, and that's the issue that we're dealing with. So I'll have to take a look at our code and talk to staff outside of this. I think the 1,100 square feet for 2 people is extremely restrictive. The 2 cars for that type of lot, knowing the house I've lived in, is extremely restrictive. And I understand your concern in protecting the district and its character. Looking at the LUP, this gentleman has a number of signatures of people who have been in support of this, even though you've received calls in opposition. And if the site distance is an issue of where cars are parked, they need to park in the driveway, you know, if he can be amenable to that. But also, our code doesn't restrict people parking in public roads. It doesn't. So, I mean, we can try to have him work with the neighborhood to do that, but they have a right to park there. So
Well, the issue that we're dealing with is not necessarily housing, unlike the previous application where that was a LUP for the additional property on the R20 lot. But what we're dealing with is the number of cars. We're not, in denying this application, I'm not requiring the owner to ask anyone to move. There just needs to be a removal of the vehicles to be in compliance with the code and also for safety for the community. So, you know, while I understand that, you know, each of the occupants have a vehicle, I'm not suggesting that anyone should move, and I don't think that anyone would have to move if there are less vehicles on the property. I'm just simply enforcing the code. And while I understand that the property is just 1,100 square feet and housing is expensive, I get that and I understand that. But what this application is asking me to decide is whether or not 5 vehicles are too many vehicles for this property.
Yeah, I would just ask that you not look at the vehicles as being separate from a living issue, because the vehicles are how people make a living. And if people can live there, they afford to live there because they're working. And if they're using their vehicles to get to work, it's directly tied to people being able to live there. So I do not look at those as being separate matters. From looking at this image and looking at the length of driveway, I can't perceive why those vehicles can't park there. I don't perceive why we can't consider even them working with stormwater and seeing if we can add additional paving to the driveway. So if there's an issue with that, you know, you see in some homes where they may have like on an angle of space for another car. But I would just ask that, again, if the parking is an issue, and again, he's not violating code. No one is violating code by having people park in the street.
I don't know that there was an issue with anyone parking in the street. The code violations have been that they're parking on the grass, on the property.
Okay, there was a statement made, Commissioner, with respect to visibility, and that impacts the neighbors. So looking at this picture, again, I'm not understanding the visibility issues unless it's inferred that vehicles are parking on the roadway. But it looks here from, again, seeing the 2 vehicles, which may be parked in front of a carport, then there's another vehicle. And can we expand outside of this view, please? It looks as if all the vehicles here can be able to be parked on that driveway. And if someone's parked in their driveway, I don't understand the argument for visibility. And I don't perceive why we cannot put a condition in here for the applicant not to park on the grass, looking at the layout that's here. But again, looking at the primary interest of this applicant, which is too many homes and too many people and too many cars for the square footage of the home, and looking at the complaints regarding the vehicles themselves, I'm not seeing enough reason for me to oppose this application. Now, do I think that the property owner needs to clean up that property and make sure that we're not having outside storage, yes, because outside storage is a violation of our code. But I'm not taking issue with, I'm not taking issue with him living there. I am taking issue also with our code and looking at the types of housing that we do have across the county and knowing that it's not unreasonable for 4 adults to be living in that type of square footage. It's not unreasonable. And I think we need to take a very close look at our code to make sure we're not being overly restrictive generally, but we're not being overly restrictive, particularly during this time when we have more people than we have places for them to live, not only in Metro Atlanta, but nationally.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I understand the difficulty in this one and certainly can relate to the relationship between the number of cars and housing availability. There is a concern, obviously, about whether or not, how we look at our code, how we enforce our code. I think, I will certainly lean on your direction in this particular motion, but I would agree with the chair's assessment that we need to revisit our code to at least look at the ratio. It is outside of this hearing, the scope of this hearing, but look at the ratio. Maybe not as much as the square footage, but perhaps the acreage of the property itself, because I think that would give a little bit more flexibility for how many cars are associated with a particular family or a particular parcel. Those are my comments.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions? All right, we'll call the question. The motion passes 4-1 with Chairwoman Cupid in opposition.
If I may ask from the board, time for enforcement or for him to come into compliance?
Excuse me, well, we've already voted, so
Yeah.
can you direct us on what we do with it? We have to reconsider the vote.
Yeah, and I was looking for a time to jump in. I guess I waited too long. So I apologize. But yeah, just direction from the board on a compliance time instead of him being this afternoon being subject to
Sure.
to the violations.
Let's go ahead and just do this formally. I make a motion that we reconsider the vote for LUP 10. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Call the question. The motion passes 5-0. Commissioner, you can go ahead and reread your motion for LUP 10 and include the motion of the county attorney.
I make a motion to deny LUP 10, and I will require the owner to come into compliance within 6 months from the date of this hearing.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any comment or any questions regarding the motion that was just shared? All right, call the question. The motion passes 5-0. Excuse me, I need to oppose that. All right. Passes 4-1 with Chairwoman Cupid in opposition. For the applicant, do you mind approaching, please? Sir, may you approach, please? Yeah. Commissioner, I just want to ask if you can clarify, because I know we had communication issues, so if you can just make sure he understands.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. The motion has been denied, but we are allowing you 6 months to come into code.
Okay.
Okay? Do you
Yes.
understand? Okay.
Thank you,
you.
sir.
Okay.
Go on to our next case.
The next case is rezoning case Z39, Carlos H. Munoz Serrano, is requesting a rezoning from GC and R20 to LI for a parking lot in Landlop 107 of the 17th District. It's located on the north side of Lions Club Drive, west of Glore Drive. Is the applicant present? Let the record show that the applicant is not present. Is there anyone here in opposition of Z39? Let the record show there is one person opposed. All those that wish to address the board, please come forward to be sworn
Well,
in.
Ms. Jeannie, let's hold on for a second. Typically, when we haven't had an applicant here, we'll try to reach out to them to see if they can get here before the end of the hearing. And a lot of times, we've given them a courtesy of just continuing one time because we don't know what may have occurred.
He was also a no-show at the PC meeting.
Okay. Did we do the same thing? Okay, but I'll trust.
He was a no-show at the
I'll trust
PC.
then, if that was the case, I'll trust your prospective commissioner. Okay. Do you want to try to reach out to him, or do you wish to proceed? Okay. All right. Yes, ma'am.
He didn't show up at the PC meeting.
Okay. Did we, okay, before we move on, did we reach out to him after the PC hearing? Are we presuming that the applicant is aware of this process and when to be here?
It's presumed that the applicant is aware of the dates he was supposed to be at the hearing, and that based on information at the applicant meeting, that he possibly decided
There was
to-
an applicant meeting, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll go ahead.
Okay, so I hadn't had an application where the applicant was a no-show, so do I just move forward with the
I'm going to
motion?
ask for the
What's
county
process?
attorney to help me.
Yes, it'd be up to the board on how, if you can move forward with it.
Okay.
The chairwoman described a usual procedure, which sometimes followed, but you can go ahead and go forward with the motion if you desire to.
Before you do that, you have someone here in opposition. I don't know if opposition wishes to speak to this application before we have the commissioner speak? Okay, why don't we do that and then?
Okay,
good.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Robin Meyer. I'm the chair of the Zoning Committee for the Mableton Improvement Coalition. I'll be very brief because I know I'm standing between, I'm one of very few things standing between you and the rest of your day. You know, we certainly appreciate Mr. Serrano's need to find a place to locate his business, but this is not the right place in our opinion. The property is designated as low-density residential on the future land use map. It's adjacent to Lions Club Park, a future church, single-family homes, and a mobile home park. If this were approved, it would be an island of industrial property in the middle of other uses. There's been no apparent effort to improve the look of this property. There are piles of building materials, debris, litter. The right-of-way is not mowed, and there is storage of trucks and materials of all sorts here. Lions Club Drive and Glore Drive are barely wide enough for two passenger vehicles to pass comfortably. There are no shoulders in some areas, and given the residential nature of the area, there are often pedestrians walking along the edge of the road. The applicant has said in his application that his trucks would only come and go once a day, and that might be the case for his business now. But if this zoning were changed to industrial, that might not be the case for his business model in the future or for a future owner or tenant of this property. So this is certainly not a place that is suitable for additional heavy commercial truck traffic. So we would ask that you deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Then I'll turn things over to you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Well, I'm not sure why the applicant changed his mind, but this is the second no-show, so I'll just move forward with a motion to deny application Z39 2022.
Is there
Second.
any discussion or comments? Call the question. The motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Commissioner. We can move on to our next case.
The next case is Z41, Southern Gas Partners, requesting a rezoning from NS and GC to NRC for convenience store with fuel sales and car wash in Land Lot 339 of the 16th District, located on the southwest corner of the intersection of Shaliford Road and Tcca Road. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is present. Is there anyone here in opposition of Z41? Let the record show there's one person opposed. All those that wish to address the board, please come forward to be sworn in.
Sir, yes, he'll present for 10 minutes, and then you'll have 10
Good morning.
minutes.
My name is Jim Corson. I am here representing the owner and the applicant. The two properties involved are on the application. One is at the intersection of Tcca and Shaliford Road. It's an old, outdated gas station. Was built back in 1996. It's an old-fashioned station. It has the service bays for oil changes, vehicle repairs, and a couple of gas tanks. It hasn't operated as a service station in quite some time. The other tract is an adjacent tract on the Shaliford Road side. It is undeveloped. Just a little history on these two parcels. When the current Cobb County Comprehensive Plan was released, the area in which these two parcels are located was changed from a community activity center to a neighborhood activity center. When that happened, these two parcels, even though they were zoned for, or the gas station was zoned for what it's being used for, it became what the county called a non-conforming zoning, just because the classification was changed from community activity center to neighborhood activity center. So just because of the designation was changed, the owner suffered, ended up with two parcels that he really can't use, because by virtue of it being classified as non-conforming zoning, the county is unable to issue any building permits to the owner to do any changes to the building, except in the situation where it has an unsafe situation. But other than that, he can't get a permit from the county to do any changes, upgrades, additions, or whatsoever to the gas station. Okay. Likewise, he has an undeveloped piece of property next door, 2.3 acres, which he can't apply for a land disturbance permit to develop that property because likewise it is non-conforming zoning. So we're here today basically to ask or to point out that it is truly a hardship on the basis of the owner, simply because the classifications changed, and it was through no fault of his own that he is now sitting there with two pieces of property that he really can't do anything with unless you grant the rezoning. The requested rezoning is in conformance with surrounding property. The other three quadrants of the intersection at Shaliford and Tcca are already zoned NRC, as well as the strip center nearby, and as well as a number of other properties up and down Shaliford Road. So we would be in compliance with surrounding properties. A little bit of discussion on what he's planning on doing. As far as the existing gas station, the building will remain virtually the same. It'll just be upgraded aesthetically, and it probably could be considered an eyesore at this point. It would be upgraded to what is normally accepted today as a convenience store. And so it would be just changed from an old outdated gas station to a current updated convenience store, similar to Quick Trip and Racetrack. The undeveloped site would have a car wash, which is not the normal car wash that you see where you have quite a few employees running around vacuuming cars, detailing cars, so forth. This will be similar to to an existing car wash that's over across from Merchants Walk. The way it operates is I, as the vehicle operator, would pull into the establishment. There are designated vacuum stations in a regular parking, well, in a larger parking space where you would get out, vacuum your car, clean it out, and then get back in line and pull in and go through the normal tunnel for the automatic car wash. So you have a lot less people on site, and it's just a much cleaner operation. So to reiterate, as far as the development of the gas station, we would not be increasing the impervious surface that's already there. As a matter of fact, we'll be decreasing it by a few hundred square feet. As far as the impervious surface that will be created on the car wash, it'll be less than 30% impervious surface of the entire 2.3 acre property. The county, the DOT had recommended, had told us when we had the initial review meeting on May 18th that they were going to restrict the existing curb cut on Shaliford to right in, right out. And they also told us that they were going to restrict the existing curb cut on Tcca to right in, right out, and left out. That means that there would be no possibility of exiting that property from either curb cut and going in a westerly direction on Shaliford Road. So DOT recommended that if we would add a second curb cut on Shaliford near the west corner of the property, they would give us a full access curb cut at that location. So what we've done is added the second curb cut that you will see on Shaliford, and this will provide a left in and left out maneuver. The existing curb cut on Shaliford will remain right in, right out only. The Tcca curb cut, which is now allowed as a full access curb cut, will become limited to right in, right out, and limited to left out. I'm sorry, no left out maneuver. But by adding that new curb cut on Shaliford, we have provided this full access maneuver. The properties are there's a creek that runs along the south side of the property between this property and the neighborhood, the single-family subdivision that's to the south of us. In addition to the state required buffer on this stream, Cobb County also has an additional 50-foot undisturbed buffer. So there will be no disturbance anywhere south of the existing gas station between it and the neighborhood. It's protected, so it will provide not only an undisturbed buffer, but the trees there will provide a screening from the surrounding subdivision. So if I can reiterate, one of the questions that are asked on the application is, does this property have an economic value as presently zoned? And I think for reasons that I've stated, it does not. the owner is handicapped by not being able to do anything with either piece of the property as it sits there today. So with that in mind, we would certainly request your approval to rezone it from its current NS and GC to NRC to allow the planned development.
Thank you. With that, we'll hear from opposition.
Good morning. I want to thank all of you that responded to my email and my next door neighbor's email about this proposal. I'm a little bit different because I've been in my house for 40 years. I'm the first owner of that house, and when I first moved in there,
Sir,
do
you mind providing us your name for the record?
Oh, Mel Skelton. I live at 2301 Sims Drive. I am directly behind the empty lot.
Okay, thank you.
Before the service station was built on the corner and before that corner was developed, I bought my house, and less than 6 months after I moved in there, they went to develop this piece of property. They clear-cut the property within, I would say, 100 feet of the creek behind my house, or less. Thank God there was an EPA engineer working for MARTA working in the other part of our subdivision. He immediately filed with EPA. They had to come in and put in silt barriers. They had to put in retention ponds. They had to reseed that lot. During the 20 years it took for it to grow back and give us a buffer from the noise and everything from Shaliford Road's traffic, there was extensive runoff. There was extensive erosion in the creek behind my house. And the creek behind my house is called Wren Creek, in case no one knows. It is natural watershed into the Chattahoochee River Basin. There was lots of wildlife, beavers, everything, hawks, blue herons used to visit there. And after that happened, it took 20 years for the wildlife to start coming back to that ecosystem. It is now back pretty good, but never back to what it was before. The creek behind my house is double the width of what it was when I moved in my house. I was not in a flood zone when I moved into my house. I'm now in a Class A flood zone. I've had water come up all the way to the house in my backyard at different times during heavy rain. I've had to bring in dirt, raise everything up, and the runoff. Now, the piece of property on the corner that we're talking about, it has been a convenience store, a car repair place. It has been anything that he has described already. It has never, ever passed muster. It has failed at every turn. It has been turned into repair shops. It is now a repair shop for Rover type vehicles. When they bring them in from off-road and they go to work on them, because all the drains are clogged in the parking lot, the silt and the runoff from where they pressure wash the mud and things off these runs into the creek. It'll be a perfectly fine, beautiful day, hasn't rained in a week, and all of a sudden the creek is full of mud. The other things that, we're concerned about is noise. When people come in to wash their cars and stuff, they like to listen to their music. And if the doors are closed and they're washing their cars, what are they going to do? They're going to turn up their music. The other thing is the hours. When the convenience store was open, it was open 24 hours a day. There were people coming and going. There was noise. The lighting was, in the back of our houses because, the tree buffer had been thinned out by the original clear cutting. And so all of these are concerns. And that, property values, we're all concerned about that. But the primary thing, that we're all worried about, because I'm not representing myself here. I'm representing all the people that live along the creek in my neighborhood. They just couldn't be here because they couldn't get off work. I'm retired, I could. And my other neighbor next door, he just had a grandson yesterday, so he couldn't be here. He was going to be here with me. We're also concerned about one of the things that they were trying to address about getting in and out, the egress and exit from the place. Shaliford Road and Tcca Road is constantly having accidents at that corner because of all of the people coming and going from all the different places. Across the street from this, where Dunkin' Donuts is now, there was an exact, almost duplicate of what this was. It was a tool rental place. It was a convenience store. It had a little breakfast diner. It had gas stations. They found when they went to clear to build the Dunkin' Donuts that the tanks had been leaking into the ground. They had not been inspected in a long time. So all the land had to be taken out. It had to be reclaimed, and that was also seeping into the ecosystem, contributing to the dying off of natural indigenous species and not coming back to the area. The tanks, I'm afraid, that are at this one right now haven't been inspected. I don't know if they're leaking, but it hasn't been a gas station, as he stated, in several years. It has been repair shops. It has been a junk holder. There is an emission control in the old car wash that's there now. That's the only viable business I see there. They did recently paint the outside of the building. It had all kinds of graffiti on the outside from the previous people that were a junk removal place, and all kinds of junk was in there you can imagine. And so this has been a multi-use place. I don't know what can be done to improve it, but if you had a house behind a convenience store with very little buffer zone behind it, because there's very little on the house in the end to this parking lot, the lights on all night long, people coming in, loud radios, revving their little engines, and their turbo pop-off valves popping as loud as they can. All this goes on. We can hear it from the other two gas stations on the other corner across the street. So between the ecosystem, the quality of life issues, the runoff, and the exacerbated erosion, because as you take land out, it can't absorb the water, and it does run off. It does create a lot more water runoff, and it goes directly into the creek. And I'm unique because I have two creeks in my yard. I have one that comes into Wren Creek alongside the house. It is also double what it was from development upstream. So I have to look at both these things. Am I going to be flooded out of my house because of all of this? Am I going to have to live with the noise and the constant people coming in and out of there all times of the night? Because these automated car washes that you can go into, you can go in at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning to wash your car if you want to. So there's a quality of life issue, there's an ecosystem issue, there's a noise abatement issue, and I don't know if all these things have been addressed. And there's also a safety issue for the egress and the exit from this property. And if it is a successful place, there's going to be a lot of traffic coming, going in and out. So I'm not against development as long as it's done right. But in this case, the gas station is, the pad for the gas station is really, really close to Wren Creek. All of the drains for that pad are clogged. So now it runs out into the street, goes around into the street and into the drain into the creek, washing all kinds of debris. I go out in my backyard and I pull out plastic, Dunkin' Donut cups, plastic bottles, cardboard, all kinds of things. You wouldn't believe some of the things I get out of my creek that have been washed in there from these pads. So I'm just asking you to be, considerate, because I have a real nice little wildlife spot in my backyard that's nice, and, it's a great place to go out and look. It's really, I should have brought you a picture, but it's landscaped nicely. I have a rock garden along the creek to slow the erosion. Like I said, I brought a lot of dirt, spent a lot of money building my backyard up, but I'm still in a Class A flood zone because of all of the erosion, and because of all the clear cutting, and because of all the development on the four corners. And, Cobb County has a balance between revenue and quality of life for its citizens. And that's the only thing I'm asking you to consider here now, is the quality of life of the citizens that live along this creek. Because as you see from the picture, it meanders along, and you see where it has that little dip and cut and then cuts back. That's my backyard. The creek comes within 50 feet of the back of my house. And so just please take this in consideration when you're considering rezoning this. I'm not against the guy redeveloping it. There's already a gas station on the corner. If he can make it viable and he can make it within reason and deal with the issues of the runoff from his parking lot and the additional water that's going into the creek out in the street because all of his drains are plugged, clean up the trash. If you went over there now, there's an old Porsche sitting there, a bunch of trailers, the gas pumps. Somebody went in there and ripped all the viable and things that they could sell, like the copper and all the fittings and off of them. The covers are off of them. The cover over that, it's been damaged for years. It's been sort of patched together, but it still looks terrible. There's all kinds of cars and trailers sitting out there in the parking lot now, not haphazardly. They're not, parked in there neatly. And so it's how it's used and how it's developed, because I know that Cobb County needs the revenue. But what they're talking about, there's within 5 miles, there are a couple of dozen car washes. There's also Z46, there's another zoning for another car wash on the other side of Shaliford, within walking distance of where they're talking about now. How many car washes do we need? Especially behind a residential area. So I hope you take all this into consideration. I've lived in Cobb County a long time. I love the county. I'd like to see it stay, residential friendly as well as business viable.
Sir, I'm sorry, your time's up.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll turn things over to you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Carl, you knew that was coming.
Carl Carver, Cobb County Stormwater.
Thank you. Can you tell us about these clogged drains and what's going on this property currently and what the impact would be with the, I know there's an existing footprint there now of where the convenience store, gas station will go, but the undeveloped property along Shaliford will be additional.
Correct. They'll have to provide stormwater management for the addition, and if depending on the modifications for the existing convenience store or gas station, we will probably we will consider that as a hot spot, which will require additional water quality treatment before it discharges into the stream. At that point, that's state regulations for stormwater management. And the runoff from the car wash area will have to also be treated like a hot spot because of potential soap contaminants and that kind of stuff. So all of that will go through pre-treatment before discharging into the stream.
Will it be underground detention?
It's very likely that he will provide underground at the time of land disturbance permitting, but we will not require runoff reduction or infiltration, but treatment is for his water quality. We don't want to infiltrate when there's potential contaminants.
Okay, and the applicant stated he was within the impervious currently on the existing parcel, but also, 30% on where the car wash is proposed?
Correct. That's based on his statement. I assume that's correct.
Okay, well, is there any way you can verify that or check that?
I can look at his.
I guess in plan review it'll be addressed.
Plan review will be enforced to the, based on what he has, and he can't exceed the zoning requirement of NRC.
Okay. And you have all that in your staff comments?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. Amy, you're next.
Okay,
I'm
excuse me, Carl.
sorry.
We have a question
I'm
from
sorry.
Commissioner Gamble.
There's some more questions for you, Carl. I'm sorry.
Hi.
It's okay. The applicant stated that the back half of the property, so the southern part of the property, pretty much from the property line of the existing GC, would not be disturbed. However, according to their site plan, they have a detention pond in that southwest lower corner, looking at the orientation on the map. So will they be removing all of those trees in order to construct the detention pond, essentially taking away the buffering that they're claiming they have?
I think that the site plan that I saw had a small detention pond that was possibly shared by the daycare as well. So I don't know if at the time frame that was built, it probably doesn't have the required volume of today's code. So I think it will have to work in conjunction with an underground system for the car wash. and try to keep that area as is.
And it's my understanding that the buffer was to remain, that they weren't.
You'd have to look at the limits. There's a site plan, and we can get the site plan up.
Yeah, this is.
Can you zoom in to that southern half of the property, please?
And put it on our screens.
Yeah, I have a different site plan.
We have the GIS on our screen. There you go. Thank you, CP.
I have a revised site plan pulled up on my computer dated June 28th. I presume that's not the site plan in the original packet.
Oh, I don't have that.
Yeah.
Do I?
Sure. Yes, sir.
Why don't we have that? Oh, here it is.
And the applicant may need to help unless you are aware, Carl, but it's showing where the limits of the detention pond are. If you see in that orange text, I don't know if that's the southern boundary, and I don't know how far it comes up, because you can look at where they have the 30-foot rear setback line, and so just gleaning, it looks like if that's the southernmost portion, that would be about.
Correct. The existing detention is within the buffer. It was put there probably before the county expanded the buffers. So it would need to remain as is, and hopefully during land disturbance permit phase, we would see something underground in the car wash area that would work in conjunction with this.
Okay, so I'm sorry, Carl, I didn't hear the beginning of what you shared. You stated that the detention pond was already put there prior.
I suspect, based on the age, that it was there before the county expanded the buffers.
Okay,
It's been there quite a while.
okay.
They had to do that.
I'm sorry, sir. I know you're trying to help inform us, but we actually will need any conversation to happen at the mic so everybody can hear, even who's listening online or via TV. So, Commissioner, if you'd like for him to help explain. Yes, sir, you can please if you want to help.
You can approach, sir.
And the applicant as well. The applicant, I'm sure, is very familiar with the property.
With respect to the site plan, I would call your attention to the fact that the undisturbed buffers go all the way to the existing south end of the gas station. None of that area will be disturbed. It's in protected area.
Okay.
The detention pond that you see down in red lettering, limits of detention pond. That detention pond was built in 1996 to serve the existing gas station. It will not be upgraded or disturbed in any way. The new development will stand alone. It will have underground detention if necessary. It'll have your normal oil and gas separators that are always required when you have gasoline, and in this case, the detergents and stuff from the car wash. So all of that stuff will be contained in accordance with current regulations. It will not affect the existing detention pond, which is in a protected area. It's there, but it won't be affected.
Okay.
And if I may, the comments that we received online from the staff on June 27th said that a variance would be required to change the parking from 19 feet, from 9 feet by 19, by 9 feet by 18 feet to 9 feet by 19 feet. We resubmitted the site plan on the 29th to Terry Martin because we didn't realize, that was just a mislabeling on the drawing.
Okay.
It is 9 by 19 feet. No variance will be required or requested.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. And sir, who's the neighbor? Did you want to address the detention pond also, or?
The retention pond is practically my backyard.
Okay, but
It was put there when it was clear cut right after I moved in.
Okay,
Okay, I was out of town, came back from being on a business trip, and I could see Shaliford Road from my deck.
Okay.
I mean, they came within 20, 30 feet of my property line, and there's supposed to be an EPA requires a certain buffer away from the creek because it is natural watershed. And that's why they had to come in and put the retention pond in. That's why, so that retention pond's been there almost 40 years. It
Okay.
wasn't put in 1996, like he said, for the gas station.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Carl. Do you have any more questions for Carl?
I guess my concern is first of all, it doesn't look like this detention pond has been maintained, which I know has been an issue this board has been addressing. But then also that if there is a detention pond there, it's potentially not functioning correctly as Mr. Skelton continues to have flooding. So while there's no intentions to change the detention or retention pond, given the fact that it might not be functioning as designed, will the county require them to update it?
We can ask for an inspection of it. And as a part of the land disturbance permit, we will be requiring a maintenance agreement for any of the new, but we'll incorporate the existing one also, which will require them to annually inspect it and to bring it up.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Anything else for Carl? Okay. Thank you, Carl. Amy?
Amy Diaz, DOT.
Thank you. Was looking at the traffic count on Shaliford,
Yes, ma'am.
is that an F now?
I believe so. Let me pull it
And
up.
DOT is recommending a left out at the second entrance?
So basically, DOT has asked them to meet our standard of getting 250 feet tangent distance from the signal. Once they get to that, then they meet our standard for full movement access. We understand the applicant's concern about having full movement to allow people to return to different directions. So that's why we have that standard to get it away from the signal. There is no prohibition for having a full movement access based on level of service of the roadway. If there was a safety concern that came out, Cobb DOT, of course, has the ability to restrict turns in the future. That's not specific to this case. That's a police power that we have.
So you don't see any danger in a left turn out there? Because I think it's a safety issue. I'm on Shaliford Road and Tcca a lot, and Lassiter's right down the street, and it's very congested there for them to be turning left out. I know there's not a median to prevent that, but, and it's already at an F, and Tcca's at a C. I think we need to, well, go ahead and explain, and then I have
So
some
we have
comments to
two
make.
driveways on Shaliford Road. The eastern one, we are restricting to right in, right out because it is
Right.
too close to the intersection. As I said, the other one meets the 250 feet spacing. So by our standards, we're allowing a full movement access. Could it be dangerous? That's a kind of a loaded question, but it is certainly an area where I would recommend caution turning left at high peak periods, but an off peak, would it be an issue? Probably not. If it does turn out to be a safety issue, then that would be something we would have to restrict in the future if it showed to be a safety issue. But because it meets our standards of 250 feet spacing from the intersection, there's no standard for me to restrict it at this time.
Okay. Do we have crash data from that intersection?
No, that hasn't been requested. It would have to be requested of our traffic
Okay.
operations.
Does anybody else have any questions for Amy?
So Amy, the second access that has the full turning, how far is that from I guess it's the daycare that sits next to that?
Are you speaking of the second access on Shaliford Road
Okay,
correctly?
so we have the second access, but then the parcel next door to it, I think somebody referred to it as a daycare.
It is.
She's asking for the distance between.
Do we know the distance?
Not off the top of my head.
And has there been any thought to have the applicant work with the childcare to use that driveway? Because my concern is how close both of the full direct turn accesses are to each other.
So interparcel connection with an adjacent parcel is not something that we can require for DOT. If it is something pursued by that, desired by the board and requested of the applicant, and it's something that they pursued and achieved, that would certainly be acceptable to DOT.
Yeah, I would have an issue with traffic coming from a gas station and accompanying retail going into a daycare parking lot. I don't think that would be appropriate. I think we'd be introducing a hazard to parents bringing their children from the parking lot to the daycare.
It would create more traffic in the daycare.
Well, I was thinking just to exit the gas station from, so it would have been a restricted turning movement to get to the full access.
Okay, does anybody else have anything for Amy? Thank you.
No problem.
Sarah, I might be giving the impression that this is typically a time period where it's for open discussion and it's a hearing where the commissioners are able to ask questions for those in the audience for clarification, but it is not a time appropriate for people in the audience to be asking questions and in a conversation with the board.
This was put on consent by the Planning Commission and also recommended for approval by staff. It is an existing gas station, or has been, and it was my understanding with what I had heard and read that the buffer was to remain intact. No one showed up at the Planning Commission, and it's also my understanding that the neighbors got the wrong time for the meeting, or, sir, you can't speak. I'm sorry. And that may be why there was no opposition at the time. However, since, I have received several emails, and I think you all have, in opposition to this. And I don't think there was a community meeting with the neighbors and maybe the daycare or businesses surrounding that with the applicant and staff and myself. So I would like to hold this case for 30 days and ask the applicant to meet with Mr. Skelton and a couple of his neighbors, or HOA, if you have an HOA, your board. And I will make myself available and also ask Mr. Carver and Ms. Diaz to be available for DOT and Stormwater with any questions. And we can meet here, upstairs, whatever's, convenient for everybody within the next 30 days and see what we can work together to come to a solution if that's agreeable to both parties. Are y'all willing to do that? Okay.
And both parties are nodding.
Okay.
Commissioner Sheffield?
Commissioner,
So-
if we can just add one thing to include the existing detention pond. There was concern that it's been overgrown and it hasn't been maintained, so if we can have an update on
Right.
that as well.
So Carl, can you do an inspection on that? Okay. Before our meeting, maybe? Okay. So with that, I'll make a motion that we hold this to the August BOC zoning meeting and schedule a community meeting in between.
I'll second. Is there any discussion? Call the question. The motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, I need to take a 5-minute break. Why don't we come back at 11? Thank you. Thank you, and welcome back to our Board of Commissioners zoning hearing this July 19th, 2022. We are now moving into our next zoning case.
The next case is moving into the other business agenda. OB item 22 of 2022, to consider a site plan stipulation amendment for Robert A. Kerr and Rochelle Kerr regarding rezoning application Z51 of 2013 for the property located on the north side of Roswell Road, west of Robert Lane, in land lots 961, 984, and 985 of the 16th District. Is the applicant present?
I think the applicant's already at the podium here.
Yes.
Just
Yeah,
getting set
let the
up.
record show the applicant is present.
Everybody's ready for lunchtime.
Yes. Is there anyone here in opposition to OB 22? Let the record show there are two.
Very good, thank you. Yes, Commissioner.
If you put the OB 22 that we just had on the screen, please, it does not coordinate, it does not correspond with the description in our agenda book.
Oh.
Right, those do not match.
It's the right name, but the road description is incorrect. I just want to make sure that does not impact any part of the hearing.
So the one I read into the record is correct?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just for those tuning in from home or the computer, the description that was on the screen is different than the one that was read into the record. The one that was read into the record is the appropriate description. Okay, Kevin, you can go ahead.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I'm Kevin Moore here and pleased to represent Robert and Rochelle Kerr, homeowners that live in the Walton Creek Estates subdivision, which is off of Roswell Road. This particular request is a bit unusual to bring forward to you, but it is one where certainly we believe the circumstances in which these good homeowners found themselves warrants this request and certainly warrants your consideration and what we'll be asking for approval. And that is an approval so that the approved rezoning site plan and open space that impacts their property and their house and their lot in this subdivision be revised so that a small amount of the open space can be conveyed by the homeowners association to the Kerrs in order to rectify the situation and circumstances that have occurred. And I'll go through that with you and explain that to you. First, I'm going to step over and kind of show you the surrounds and why we find ourselves here, and then go through the history of exactly what occurred and what unfolded to put ourselves and put the Kerrs in this position. Thank you. Now we're going to be turning to the final plat for Walton Creek Estates that's now on your screen. Here we have Roswell Road, the entrance to this small subdivision that was rezoned to the OSC category. So it is a R15 OSC zoning that is here. The open space primarily is designated throughout the middle of this subdivision, kind of highlighting it for you here, which is where there's paths and walking paths and things like that for the enjoyment. However, once you move this way to this portion of the subdivision, you find the Kerrs lot and where their house and where they live that they purchased in December of 2019. And this is their lot here. Behind their lot is open space per this plat and per the approved zoning at the time. It's about 30 feet wide as it goes along the back of all of these lots adjacent to that subdivision. There's a little bit bigger space here, and it comes back, it stops there, and then there's open space here behind these lots. But in specifically, you can see just this little strip of open space that's behind their lot according to this plat. Now, I'm going to kind of give you a better, even fuller picture of it, focusing in on their lot and their survey, which will also bring us to what we're dealing with overall. This is showing the Kerrs lot and house. They have a beautiful home And you can see now, this is the open space area that was designated for the zoning that is adjacent to their lot. What you can also see is, you can see this is their house and deck, and you can see this is their actual property line here. But you can see how close their house and deck is to that actual property line, and then you have 30 feet of open space that's simply located behind their house. You also see in this survey and diagram, you'll see that there is a wall. That's a 2-foot retaining wall that was constructed by the Kerrs. They also did some extensive landscaping to take away what was brush and unsightly types of undergrowth and brush that was contained within this area, and replanted it, and it's quite beautiful. I'm going to show you some pictures so you can really start to get a perspective of how this appeared, and also give you some background to how the Kerrs got here. So I'm going to show you 2 pictures taken from their deck so that you can see what we're dealing with. So here you see the edge of their deck where the picture was taken from, with reference. You can see the 2-foot little retaining wall that's there and the landscaping they did, and that's a privacy fence that's along the property line that was built and put in place by the developer previously for the neighboring or this subdivision. And you can see the beautiful work that they did. And to give you another perspective of that same thing, you can now see, kind of looking further down, from a visual standpoint, it's absolutely understandable why the Kerrs, upon purchasing their home and walking out, would assume that was their property. That it was, why in the world would you have common open space owned by the HOA running along the rear? It just doesn't seem like there would be enough room for that. But the story goes a little bit deeper, and there's a couple of things I want to point out. At the time when they purchased their home, the builder actually went with them, went with Mr. Kerr, went to the rear of the property and spray painted in orange spray paint the metal stake marking the corner of what he believed was his property, next to the fence, to show him where his property line was, not showing him that the property actually was encumbered, or not encumbered, but actually was much short of that, was 30 feet short of that, and there was actually open space there. The builder even gave him the number of the tree guy that would help him clear that kind of overgrowth and brush within that open space area, fully leading the Kerrs to believe that this was not open space, but that this was a part of their yard. Further to that point, you can see how where those trees are planted and beyond that little retaining wall, that's a higher elevation. It actually sloped from the fence towards the house. That open space area did, causing a drainage problem in what was their backyard, or what is their backyard, and even leading to water coming really close to the house because there was no drainage features to do that. In part, they built the retaining wall, installed an extensive French drain system behind that retaining wall that takes that water that comes off of there and takes it down to where the appropriate detention facilities are for the neighborhood. So they did this work believing in full that this was on their property, had no idea. A couple of things that would have prevented this. Number one would be the builder himself knowing what actually was there and who did not, and pointing those things out to him. Another thing that could have prevented this from happening was certainly the Kerrs themselves. They could have pulled a plat and been able to identify potentially that strip behind the lot they were buying was not going to be their property and was instead open space. But how many of us do that? A lot of us in this room do, because we're familiar. But I can guarantee you, and we've seen it enough times, that typical new homeowners or residents buying homes don't do that. They just don't. It's not something that comes to their mind to do. They don't even know that potentially such a thing even exists. They go out and look at the house in the subdivision, see what they think is their lot, and that's what they're buying. That could have prevented it, and they've acknowledged that all along during this episode. Also, what could have prevented this, and this would have never happened had the OSC regulations and requirements been forced upon this development. An OSC development is required to have, as part of the OSC regulations, that you mark and it signify where the open space is by fence, signage, or similar type of designation so that this doesn't happen. That's in the OSC. That's supposed to happen when the OSC is developed, where you have open space and it's supposed to be marked. That was not required of this development. That was missed. The county didn't require it. That should have been there. And that would have prevented this from happening as well. So here, the Kerrs find themselves in this situation and are simply asking that this area be conveyed to them. Even with this small area being conveyed to them, the open space requirement for the OSC in this particular development would remain to be met. It would be met. We're not going below that requirement, but it does help to resolve this particular situation for them. They have received the support of their HOA, and I want to just submit that for the record. It's a letter from the HOA for Walton Creek supporting this proposal. And we understand East Cobb Civic Association, our good friends with ECCA, are opposed, and they're opposed from the standpoint of the precedent of reducing designated open space in an OSC, in an open space community, and doing it in this way and converting it to private property as opposed to HOA-held open space. And they're concerned about that precedent, and I understand that. But precedent doesn't have to go one way. It can go several different ways. Circumstances like this, we would hope, would set the precedent for looking at the circumstances and looking to see what has happened here, such that fair, compassion, and empathy can drive a result that doesn't punish the wrong party. Punishing the Kerrs in this situation, from our standpoint, is punishing the wrong party for a situation of all the people involved. They were responsible for the least. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we'll hear from opposition.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Chris Lindstrom, representing the East Cobb Civic
you.
Association.
Yes, we can't hear you well. Do you mind approaching the mic? Thank you.
How about that?
Much better.
Okay. My name is Chris Lindstrom, representing the East Cobb Civic Association and one of the case managers for OB 22. The applicant's home is in an R15 OSC subdivision, as you know, zoned in May of 2013, with open space located behind their property. As part of the stipulations and in accordance with the open space community regulations, 30.3% Walton Creek Estates property shall remain in contiguous open space as shown on the revised site plan. Item 11 of Mr. Garvis Sam's letter of May 15th of 2013 specifically states, for those lots directly contiguous to open space areas, the deeds vesting title in the ultimate owners of said lots shall contain a recital explaining that said lots are being purchased with the owner's acknowledgement that commonly owned open space exists to the rear of the respective properties and cannot be built upon, unquote. Item 12 of Mr. Sam's same letter states, quote, a conservation easement shall be recorded along with the subdivision covenants, excuse me, in Cobb Superior Court deed records for the purpose of protecting the open space from development in perpetuity. The homeowners have already had the open space behind the property cleared and landscaped, an area they do not own. This landscaping includes a brick wall through the middle of the area, as you've seen. They are now trying to remedy the mistake by purchasing this land in order to keep their landscaping and the wall. However, if they are allowed to do it, It breaks up the contiguous flow to the open space established for the subdivision. It also encourages other homeowners in the subdivision to do the same, nibbling away at any open space on a first-come, first-served basis. Granting a request to purchase OSC property by an individual homeowner that breaks up the contiguous open space is counter to the intention of the Cobb County OSC Code. OSC is more than just a minimum percentage required by the code. The open space provides and protects a dedicated area of contiguous land while offering that contiguous property as an amenity to the entire neighborhood to enjoy. A buffer to the adjacent subdivisions, as well as providing additional pervious surface for stormwater runoff for smaller lots. The important issue with OB 22 is, if allowed, the ECCA believes this purchase will set a precedent, not just for this open space community here, but for others within Cobb County, both now and in the future. ECCA does recommend denial of OB 22 and the OSC property restored to its original state, including the removal of the wall. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone speaking in opposition? All right, seeing none, the hearing is closed, at least for the applicant in opposition. Ms. Jeannie, what is staff's recommendation?
Staff recommends denying the request to remove the open space. We could see a recommendation of an easement that would allow the retaining wall and landscaping to be maintained and to remain, as long as no structures would be allowed.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner?
Awesome, thank you. Certainly a lot of things to consider with regards to this case, and appreciate everyone's due diligence. I do have several different questions, and this will probably go to staff first. Not sure if it's our attorney or Jeannie, if you can assist, but it was mentioned earlier that there was a lack of awareness of who owned that property. It's on our plat, it is clear on the plats that that is open space, though?
It is clear on the plat.
Okay. And so if, where does that liability fall? Is that in terms of the residents? Are they, in terms of if they were communicated to that this was their property, because according to the history, there had been markings?
Well, if I could borrow from Mr. Moore's presentation, there may have been representations that were made, but as he also said, they did not look at the actual survey, which shows that it's not theirs. So, I mean, it's up to the board to decide ultimately. I mean, it's on the survey, and the survey is the legal document that describes what property they own and what they don't. If it was actually theirs, they wouldn't be here today and going through this process.
Okay, thank you. And Kevin, if you can, or applicant, if you can come and approach the podium. I do have a couple of questions as well. We know that this was a result of a code enforcement issue. Is the code enforcement issue basically that there had been a structure in the open space?
Yes, the citation is for the wall, the 2-foot retaining wall that was installed. That's what it's for.
Okay.
Because it's installed on open space, which is supposed to not have retaining walls.
And you also mentioned something about stormwater conveyance. Is this, how long has the structure been in place?
They installed it in December 2020 and 2021, early 2021.
Okay. Has there been a reduction of stormwater issues as a result of putting in that retaining wall?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
The retaining wall with the French drain behind it that captures that water coming from the fence. If you look at the picture, it comes from the fence, and instead of now just flowing straight down into their backyard and closer to their house, you shouldn't have slopes coming towards the house anyway from a stormwater standpoint. Now, I don't want to take Mr. Carver's thunder with it, but what it's doing is it's capturing that water and directs it to the stormwater pond.
Okay. Was that part of the impetus for putting this structure in? Was it for stormwater purposes or?
Yes. That was one of the large main reasons as a way to fix that, yes. And provide for a pretty backyard.
Understood. Thank you. I'm going to ask Carl to come for a little bit. Oh, sure. Okay.
Okay.
Wait a second, Carl. Go ahead.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
where the wall is that the boundary of the backyard and behind that is the open space? Or is,
No, let me go back to the drawn-in survey, and you can see the wall is basically, call it in the middle of the open space area. And that shows the picture
so
you see there.
the grass area in front of the wall isn't their property?
No.
Well, where does it end?
Can I turn to the survey and I'll show you
Mhm.
exactly, because it shows much better.
Because on the other site plan, it looks like just the space between the wall and the fence where the
Right.
trees are planted is behind them for the open space designation.
So this is the survey this is the survey they actually obtained much later as part of this application. And so you can see this is their home here outlined. Here is the wall. Well, I keep moving it. Here's the wall. But this area here, this labeled additional area, this is the 30 feet of open space. So the deck you can see is right here, and there's the actual property line. So all that grassy area you saw there is primarily in the open space area.
Okay. So they can use that area as green space or the HOA space, but they can't put a playground or build anything in there?
That's correct.
But they only landscaped on the other side of the wall?
They installed the sod and the grass
Okay.
as well up to that wall, and then landscape behind it.
And there were trees there, a wooded area?
It wasn't wooded, it was scrub, brush, sapling type trees that were very small. It wasn't much, it wasn't what we would think of if we thought of an enjoyable open space area. It was on a slope with not much to look at.
And instead of deeding the property, the open space property to them, did the HOA consider granting an easement to keep the wall and the trees they planted?
I think the HOA would consider doing that. The difference is, if we could have handled it that way, we would have, but the difference is the wall is considered a violation of the open space requirements. And so the request from the Kerrs would be to have that conveyed to them so that they can own what they've installed and maintain it. But failing that, certainly the wall doesn't need to be yanked out under these circumstances from our standpoint. Obviously, that's a decision the board can make, but that's when we would request not be made, that the area be restored and the wall yanked out. We don't think that would be appropriate at all.
Legally, can that happen, Bill?
I'm sorry. Jeannie and I were looking at the actual submitted plans. I didn't hear the question. I'm sorry.
The easement, would that be legal to do and keep the wall, or would they have to remove the walls?
Well, if the easement back over to the homeowners association and they'd have to be able to get a LUP or a SLUP in order to be able to, because that would be still out of violation of a code. So it just isn't a matter of the ownership, it's also the condition of the property itself.
Yeah, okay.
So
But that's gonna,
from our standpoint, yeah, from our standpoint, what staff's recommending, and that is that the request from the Kerrs be denied. That is the ability to actually change the open space that's designated on the approved zoning, but instead allow for the wall and installed landscaping to remain. That is something that the board can approve as a separate condition to this zoning, which is why we're here on a other business item. And that would allow those improvements to remain, allow the stormwater benefits to remain, and then between the Kerrs and the HOA, they can arrive at whatever private agreement they would need to handle that.
But would it be owned by the Kerrs or would it be HOA open space?
It would remain HOA-owned open
But they
space.
could maintain it and keep
They could.
Okay.
They could, and that will also allow for those improvements to remain.
Yeah, I was going to say, to the maintenance question, the idea is by keeping it as open space under HOA territory, we don't play a role in that. That's not something that that's between the private residents and the HOA from a maintenance perspective.
And by denying it, we're not setting a precedent.
Bingo. But we'll get there. We want to make sure that, I want to make sure that there's limited scope under, go ahead.
I'm going to respectfully disagree with you on the precedents. Mr. Moore, you stated that when they installed the French drain, that it went down to the detention area. Well, in order to do that, you have to run behind all the other properties that are adjacent to this, and there was, what, 5 or 6 of them?
Mm-hmm.
So did they run the French drain all the way down to the detention
They
area?
did not, but my understanding is where that's now going is it's not going into somebody else's backyard. It flattens out, so it's just taking the water towards the downhill, where it can go downhill and not go towards somebody's house.
Okay, because my concern is yes, this property owner has resolved the water issue on their property, but now it's going to be draining on to the next property. And if we look at the site plan here, these homes aren't developed yet. These lots aren't developed. It's also interesting to see how much larger this house is compared to the other houses. So I think we've got many things going on here. But my concern is if this property owner did this, then all these other property owners through here are going to have that same expectation to then have the neighborhood be able to use it.
Well, this is where I was going to have Carl come up and address, because I don't know if Kevin
You can be seated.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know if there was going to ask a question.
Unless he has something to add on that topic.
Yeah, my concern is that the applicant has a certain amount of time, the opposition has a certain amount of time. So the more Kevin is up here, the more he's actually adding time that's not balanced to opposition to be able to state their case. I know you called him back, but he's just staying up there, and he's sharing his view as to what his desire is continually, and that, again, it kind of adds more time to the applicant that's not being balanced to those in opposition.
Hi, Carl.
Hi.
I'm not sure if you've had a chance to take a look at, or what, generally speaking, what staff's comments were with regards to this parcel and the retention wall that was put in.
Well, with the French drain system behind the retaining wall, that typically will drain the infiltration runoff that's behind the wall, and you typically will daylight at the end of the wall. So I don't know the details of that French drain system, but it probably discharges at the end of the wall and will then slope to where the natural slope is for the rest of the adjacent properties across the sod or whatever, which creates some infiltration. It probably did correct runoff going towards their house.
Okay. Yeah, without the other properties being developed, did you have any?
Well, just kind of looking at the site, I mean, you can almost see where they cleared it. I mean, this was before, but you can almost see where the water was running down into the potential 2 lots adjacent to it. So by them putting in the French drain, yes, they're concentrating the water, it'll discharge at the end, but it's still going to be potentially draining through these 2 properties that are adjacent to this, which is going to cause these 2 properties to have issues, which then they're going to want to do the same thing to remedy water coming onto their properties. So then this is just going to kind of snowball is the concern.
And this is kind of where I'm curious, you know, what the stormwater plan was for these properties with regards to this zoning. But, and like I said, I don't know if you have any of that additional information or insight for us. But I would certainly say that the decision on whether or not the wall stays or goes is dependent on.
If we could put the plat back up. Well, no, the subdivision plat. So the lots adjacent to it and all the way down to the open space near the stream, each one of them has the half moon symbol on those lots, which is going to require a stormwater sign-off on each one of those lots when they're built. So when they come in for their building permits on those, they will come through stormwater for review. At that time, we'll be evaluating how each one will let their drainage come between the lots. Because the detention pond is on the other side of the street. So they'll have to create sheet flow through between each residence. And I think that's starting at lots 12 there, going eastward. So each one of those lots will be required to file a site plan for approval by stormwater. So to answer your question, I think we'll be reviewing each one of those when they come in.
I'll just share with the commissioner, if you look at our OSC code, the OSC code says the district is intended to provide for the preservation of green space as a non-structural stormwater runoff and watershed protection measure. So even though you might be looking at this for that lot, our OSC code is looking at us not providing structures in that space. It's looking for us to preserve that as an open space. So, I mean, there is an issue with even us looking at the benefit to this property and looking at the burden of the code on adjacent properties. The other property owners, by being in this zoning category, have that code applied to them. And so I look at it less as what the benefit or burden is to the particular property owner, but what the whole community is tied to. And the whole purpose of this code is, again, to preserve that open space. And, you know, as Commissioner Gamble said, this is a very slippery slope where every adjacent homeowner is going to be looking to have that space, and it's going to undermine why that OSC code was, or why that OSC overlay was put on this particular zoning. And from what I understand, Jeannie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the OSC, the open space area needs to be contiguous. So, you know, as opposed to removing a lot and putting it contiguous there, it was done very creatively, and I would question if whether or not we allow this to happen in the future. But it was done creatively to give the opportunity to develop more lots. So you put the open space behind every lot, as opposed to just taking out the lot and just adding it directly to that shared open space. I don't think it would have been clear to anybody that they have free reign to run behind everybody's backyard unless the developer did something specific to mark that, and they did not. So, you know, my concern with granting this, even though it's beautifully done, is that I can't see having the burden put on every other adjacent homeowner to have that, to have the code apply to them, but not do it here. And then you're having that feature again, the OSC code is specifies not having structures for stormwater.
Is it specified of not having structures for stormwater, or
Yes,
specified for not having structures because of stormwater?
The code says, I mean, however somebody wants to interpret how they wrote the code.
Well, I say that because it makes a really big difference, because I'm looking at the difference of, and we still have open questions on whether or not this is positive for stormwater.
All
but
I can do is tell you what the code states, and it says the overlay district is intended to provide for the preservation of green space as a non-structural stormwater runoff and watershed protection measure.
And so it sounds like it's for the benefit of stormwater conveyance.
However somebody wants to interpret it, I didn't write the code, I can just tell you what I'm reading the text to say.
Okay. Okay, I just wanted to make because I did have questions about structure, and because I know when it comes to stormwater, a lot of that was around making sure that.
I can read to you the additional sentences, it might clarify for you.
Okay.
To provide a residential zoning district that permits flexibility of design in order to promote environmentally sensitive and efficient uses of the land. To preserve into perpetuity unique or sensitive natural resources such as groundwater, floodplains, wetlands, streams, steep slopes, woodlands, and wildlife habitat. So when I read that, to me, if it's trying to maintain a natural resource such as groundwater, floodplains, adding in a French drain is not a natural way of protecting stormwater.
Okay.
I'm excuse me, not protecting, not protecting the area from stormwater runoff. It's not a natural feature.
Okay. All right, because I was looking at more of impacting permeability, but, okay.
The wall is definitely a structure.
Yeah. And certainly the community benefit was the open question that I had around stormwater itself. Because what I don't want to do is exacerbate another issue, because water compounds into one corner of a slope, and then you have all of these houses with sinkholes, and that's going to be a big problem if jury's still open on a retaining wall, even creating or having a solution for that. Okay, that does at least answer some of those questions. I think you had another question for Carl.
So the question of having, like, when in the code, and let me, non-structural stormwater. So is this retaining wall with the French drains considered a non-structural stormwater runoff? Because to me, it's always been interpreted as you wouldn't have your detention pond or such considered in your open space.
I don't know that the French drain behind the retaining wall is so much for stormwater control as it is for the structural of the wall.
Yes, to keep the water from deteriorating the wall.
Because you don't want infiltration or a lot of water behind the wall. It will push it over. So normally in an open space community where we have no stormwater structures behind the houses, we require shallow drainage swells between each house that drain to the street. Or they could have landscape inlets and that kind of stuff, or an infrastructure, but it's on the lot. It's not in the open space.
So when these construction plans were originally brought in, was the developer to construct a swale on this property to help convey the water down towards the detention area?
I'd have to review that particular lot, but that is our normal requirement.
Okay.
The reality is I don't know setback requirements. There's barely any setback between what we see as the property line and the back of that house. The backyard or the deck is right on that property line.
So the setback that I saw on the site plan was 20 feet, and the back of the home does sit right on that 20-foot mark, and the deck does extend beyond that.
Yeah. There's no backyard in this one.
There is now with the grass.
Legally.
Well, here's
They can't build in that.
I mean, the consideration that we have before us, right, is not ownership, but leaving the structure for this purpose. That would, it would all still be maintained as open space. That's the option we have ahead of us.
I support this in a way that cannot be satisfied through this other business item, because this other business item only pertains to this piece of property. But if the developer wants to come back with the other business item for the entire community and give the adjacent property owners the use of that open space, whether it be through that easement, but then to me, if that easement is there, that structure doesn't need to be there. Or the developer can come back in, don't grant an easement, give them the property, and come back and find somewhere else to add the equivalent of that property to get to the percentage of open space required. But I don't think they can have their cake and eat it too. Because that developer should have known when they developed that home exactly what was going on. And to me, I think this is a civil issue between the property owner and the developer.
If I can just ask staff to read the recommendations again, I kind of got lost in.
We recommend denying the request to remove the open space. I did mention that there could be a recommendation to approve an easement that would allow these homeowners to maintain what they have planted and a small retaining wall, but no structures in the future, and full access of the open space would remain.
So the wall would remain based on.
That's kind of up to the board.
That's difficult for us even to direct. I mean, we can encourage them to consider the easement, but the easement would be for them to consider with the HOA, not with the county.
There is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Has this been conveyed to the HOA yet? Has this development, has it been signed off and conveyed to the HOA, or is it still under control of the developer? The reason why I'm asking is because the one aerial that we saw, there was many homes that weren't built, which means this has not been conveyed to the county and signed off, which means it's still under the developer's control.
And Commissioner, if I may, in your OB packet too, the initial letter from to address Mr. Peterson from Mr. Sams dated May 15th, 2013. Item number 12 actually speaks to a conservation easement that shall be recorded along with the subdivision covenants and the Cobb Superior Court deed for the purpose of protecting the open space from development in perpetuity. And so that conservation easement, if it's been recorded, would then protect that area. And it goes on to say that this open space has been meaningfully positioned in an integral part of the community, where the primary purpose of the open space is to include the conservation of stream which traverses the subject property. The open space may contain walking paths in different areas like that. And obviously, that's speaking as part of where the stream runs, but also included in that is the open space that runs behind each of these buildings. I don't know if Mr. Moore or his client knows whether that conservation easement has been filed, but that would keep that open space undisturbed in perpetuity. So.
But if it hasn't been recorded, we could potentially be here again with lots 7 through 12.
I don't know how current that GIS map is as far as whether those have been developed yet or not.
Jessica, is there a way to find out?
Can we call the applicant up here?
The applicant won't know.
If the other houses are.
Commissioner, Nash has advised that the aerial is from 2022, so it is recent.
So it is recent. So there's a high probability that this, again, the subdivision is still under the control of the developer, which means potentially that the green open space has not been conveyed and recorded, correct, Bill or Jessica? I would have thought the green space would have conveyed and been recorded prior to start of development.
Correct. But I don't, confirmation whether it's been done or not, I do not know. So.
What does it take for us to get confirmation on that?
Contact the Superior, or Clerk of Superior Court.
I don't know which division from community development looks at that before the plans are going to go forward.
Yeah, I would have to check with staff.
Because my concern is, again, I understand why the property owners constructed the wall. You know, I'm appreciative of them putting up some buffering back, because we know that usually the open space buffer in OSCs are to help screen from the adjacent neighbors, especially since, again, just looking at this aerial, you know, these are large established lots. So that is being taken away. But my concern is if it hasn't been recorded correctly, this is going to be a continuous issue. I don't know, Bill, if we can do a hold to review that, and then if it hasn't been done, work with the developer to get that remedied.
Of course, I mean, you could hold the case, and community development can look at it, and we can make a determination whether it's been filed or not. I don't know if the same developer is developing it or not, and this is from 2013, so there could have been a lot of changes in the developers between now and then.
Yeah, I think I would like to see what information is out there. Anything that can help tighten this and close it out would be preferred, certainly by this board.
I'll second a motion to hold.
Okay, well then I'll make a motion if that's the case. Motion to hold this case for 30 days with information around the recorded open spaces designated for this area. In addition, I would like to see some information around stormwater management plans with regards to the potentially platted properties with this developer.
To the next BOC meeting?
Next BOC
Thank you.
zoning hearing.
And I will second with OB 22, correct?
Correct, for OB 22.
Yeah, let's just take that description off the screen. It's confusing. It's the wrong location. OB 22 pertains to a different area. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? I'll call the question. The motion passes 5-0. Ms. Jeannie, I believe that concludes today's agenda.
It does.
All right, with that, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Good job.